Hello, thank you for joining me today. My name is Lisa Whitehouse and I'm the artist behind Whitehouse Art. For today's tutorial, I'm going to walk you through how to paint a coneflower using watercolors. For a list of everything you need to get started, just check out the video description below. So we're going to start by sketching out the flower, and with most of my videos I'll show you I like to do a fairly simple shape to start, so just showing approximately where I want it to go on the page, and then about approximately how big I want the petals to go. And I do this extremely light so that I don't have to even erase it at this point. So this is just laying out how big I want it to be. And then I go over and I go a tiny bit darker, but still not super dark. So we're gonna start with a half sun shape, kind of like a sun rising. And then we're gonna just start drawing some petals. And so I'm gonna draw one kind of coming out like this. And they get narrower when they hit the base of the flower. We're going to draw another one here, and we want to vary how they link together, so some are going to overlap, some are going to be bigger than others. It's not important that they're all perfect. We're just going to keep going around till you get a good amount of petals of varying lengths and sizes. And I'm going to draw the stem coming out down below. And it's not going to go all the way, we're just going to have this in the center of the page. But we're going to have another petal coming behind that. And then maybe another one coming out here, that's a little narrower. And lastly, one here. So I think that's a good amount of petals to have. And then what I'm going to do is just draw in where they hit the center of the coneflower. So just drawing kind of a loose line. And you can see I did draw it quite dark, but you want to keep it as light as possible. But just for the sake of the tutorial, I'm going to have it a little bit darker. All right, so first things first, we're going to get down some color. So I'm going to make my coneflower pink. It's a very common color of coneflower. And I like to start out with the center. So I'm actually going to add a touch of pink to the center, but it's mostly going to be dark. So we're going to add just clear water all over. And then I'm going to take my permanent rose and just drop it in along the top. And have your brush, kind of the tip of your brush, whether you're using a round brush or a dagger brush, have it just kind of bounce up a little bit. And this creates a little bit of texture on the flower. And then we're just going to let it slowly bleed down. And then moving in the opposite direction, we're going to use some Payne's Gray. And it's going to bleed up quite a bit. And depending how much water you have on the page already, it's going to bleed up more or less. That's okay. We're going to want this to end up being fairly dark, so you're only going to want a sliver of pink at the end. But for this coat, because we're doing two coats, we're going to want it to look about like this for this coat. And then we'll leave that alone. So next, I'm going to do the shape of the coneflower, and for this we're going to do clear water down as well, and this is the first coat, and the first coat is going to be a very loose coat. So I'm using a round brush, and then I'm going to take some clear water and I'm just going to blot clear water everywhere, but I'm being careful to leave a thin line around where the petals meet the center of the flower. So I'm just loosely adding clear water down everywhere, not paying attention to staying in the lines. Even if you get it outside like that, that's great. So just going everywhere except for touching the black, unless you let it dry, and then you don't have to be as mindful. All right, so now we're gonna add some pink. So we're keeping the pink fairly light for this coat. So we're just dropping it in, kind of following the shape of the petals, but realizing that it's gonna go outside of the petals because of the clear water laid down. So this is all just about getting a base coat before we keep going. So it's gonna all be the same color and shade of pink. Oh, see, I touched it a little bit. That's what happens, it's just gonna come out. But the easiest way to deal with that is just if you have paper towel nearby, you can dab some of that up. All right, now what I'm gonna do is splash some clear water around And the reason for that is it's going to cause the pink to bleed even more outside of the shape of the flower. And we want that. This is how we're going to get that real loose feeling on the painting. All right. So that's about what you want to see for your first coat. We're going to let this dry 100%, and then I'm going to show you what I would do next. All right, so now that it's had quite a bit of time to dry, we're going to go ahead and start working on some of the details in each petal. So this gave us a nice loose background, but we want to now add a bit more detail. So what I'm going to do is start with this petal right here, and I'm not going all the way over it. I'm leaving some white spots, and then I'm taking a fairly saturated amount of that dark pink, and I'm just dropping it in right at the base. And now because my middle's dry, I can just go ahead and drop it right in. And I'm just kind of using the tip to draw some lines out. Then I'm going to take a little bit of purple, and I'm going to drop that in right at the base. And that's all you want to do for that petal. So then we're going to make our way around, and I'm going to do each one, but I'm going to alternate because I'm going to want that to dry before I move on to the next one. So I'm going to do this one now, and I'm going to follow the same pattern. So I'm going to take a bit of pink, drop it in right at the base, getting rid of that white gap that I'd left. And then taking a bit of purple and dropping that in as well. We want it to be darkest right at the base, so you can pull out a little bit, kind of like I'm doing here by adding some shadowing, but we don't want to pull out too much. We want it to definitely stay lighter towards the end. So skipping another one, we're just going to make our way around. And if there's any parts that you left that are still wet, that's okay if it bleeds out a little bit. It's part of the charm of loose watercolors. It's hard to get it really wrong. And if you do find that your first go at it isn't perfect, just keep in mind watercolors are finicky. They're not always perfect the first time, and that's okay. They're a fairly quick medium, so you can always try again. All right. So now that we've done all those, we're going to go in and try to do some of the bottom ones. We're going to keep those a little bit darker, but we're going to be mindful not to touch the upper ones. So that it's going to be similar to before. You can either let it dry 100% or you can go in with careful precision and just do a coat on the bottom ones. And these ones we're going to want to be darker because they're shadowed. So we're going to add a touch more purple to this one too, because they're shadowed by the leaves or the petals over top. Take some purple, and I'll probably even add a little bit more after, but this is good for now. You can see I went a little bit more dark with this. Same with this one. We're going to make this one a little bit darker. And then I'm going to go in and do the top. And for the top, some of this is actually going to bleed in when I do it. And I'll show you what I mean by that. But we're going to take the brush and just draw little dots all over here, just like before with clear water. And then I'm going to take some dark purple. And I'm just going to start dropping that in here, right at the base, and letting it bleed up where it wants to. You can see I'm just letting my brush bounce off the page. As I said before, this is going to be almost black when it's done. All right, so this is a good time to stop and let it dry completely because we want to do these petals here and I don't want thin lines between every single petal. So I'm gonna let this dry before I move on and do this third coat. All right, so we can keep going with the petals. It's doing the same as before. We're just adding lines along each petal and then starting with pink. With watercolor, it's all about building up layers, so sometimes it can be a little bit tedious, but your patience will pay off because your painting will just be a little bit more intricate, a little more detailed, the more layers you put on it. So same as I mentioned before, I am keeping it fairly light for these top petals. I love how vibrant this pink is. It's called Permanent Rose, and it just really jumps off the page. I've tried a lot of different pinks, and some of them, I think it's called Opera Rose. It's quite bright. It's almost too bright for me. Some of them are a little too muted. So finding that right one that works for you is always nice. Oh, forgot to do a little bit of purple at the base here. Not too much, you don't want it to be too dark. And I noticed I left a few here, so I'll just go in and ever so carefully add a little bit of purple there. And same with this one, except this one, because that petal's wet, I'm gonna have to be careful. Use my liner brush. Sometimes when I need just the finest detail, it's good just to use a liner brush. All right. So this is a good time to go in, and the petals that are fully dry, we're actually gonna add one more coat on where we're gonna take some pink and some purple, and we're just gonna draw some lines on them, just for a little bit of detail. So I'm just taking the tip of my brush, or if you have a liner brush that works better for you, go ahead and do that. And then I'm gonna take some purple and I'm just gonna redefine the top a little bit. I'm just pulling out some lines here. You'll notice I'm not going too crazy. We don't need too many. Some of these are still wet, so. Getting them a little bit more fine is ideal. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some Payne's Gray just on the tip of the brush, and I'm actually gonna add a few dots here and there here, just to help define top of the flower a little more. And so some of these will stand out more than others. As they dry, they'll fade, but just having a few on the top too is good. Then what I'm going to do is take my liner brush again, take some pink, and just add a few more swipes. Some nice bright ones is good. All right, and then we're gonna do the stem. So we're gonna let this dry, and I'm gonna draw a thin line just going down, and I'm gonna take a little bit of lime green and just drop that in and let it fade out. And then I'm going to take a little bit of emerald green. I'm going to start that at the top. Oops. A little bit dropped into the petal, that's okay. Dab it up. And even if you see some of that green in there, I kind of like that. So I'm just making it lighter towards the bottom, and then last but not least, I'm going to take a little bit of Payne's Gray and just drop that in right at the top. Making my way down. All right, and then we're gonna add just a few splatters just to do a little more pink on the background. Make it even a little looser, so I do clear first, and then a few here and there. And some of these look a little strong right now, but that's okay. They lots of them will lighten, and some of the ones that are just a little too dark, I'm actually gonna lighten them with my paper towel. So I always have lots of paper towel handy, or an old rag works great. All right, so we're gonna let that dry, and then I'm gonna come in with a little bit of white and just highlight a few spots. So now that my painting has had a chance to fully dry, I'm gonna go in with some poster paint. Any white paint you have will do. A white watercolor is gonna dry a little bit too transparent. So you want like a white poster paint, a white gouache, something along those lines, acrylic. And I'm gonna go in and just add a few swipes of white. And these will dry a little bit darker, but I'm just highlighting a few little spots on the flowers, especially right where it's gotten so dark at the base of it. This helps just redefine where the petals start. So I did a few there, and then what I'm going to do is highlight a couple of the little seeds on it. And then we're going to go in and just do a few more here and there. Like I said, these will dry lighter, so it's just about adding more texture to the piece at this point. And then I'm just going to add a little highlight on the stem itself. And I think that looks good. So we're just going to sign it, and it's all done. So if you enjoyed painting along with me, be sure to hit the like button and hit subscribe if you want to see other paintings just like this one. Thank you so much for watching.